Young cat got back, did a little bit. Now we hardy, buffy, tough, do-rag and Tim's. Kinda hard to get a job back out on the block. Charge that to the game. Young girl, she grew up in a rush. Had it bad, no doubt. She don't know who to trust. Every man she ever loved only wanna crush. Charge that to the game. But it's all gravy. Hey, baby. Shots get popped, the cops shut down the party. Jeans sag low, blow smoke out of the chest. We've got love for y'all, which y'all don't love us. Spin the ball, I go on them chromey things. Yeah.
Alrighty, time to get started. Thank y'all for coming through. It's been a very difficult weekend for many. I want to acknowledge that. So your presence today is not slept on. I appreciate you coming through. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a long meeting with plenty of decisions to make. Next slide. I do want to remind folks that we are being live streamed. So in the case that you do not want to be seen, make sure that you keep your camera off. If anyone is trying to access this meeting right now and did not sign up before, they can go on our link tree at linktr.ee/HCEDD in order to access the Zoom, in order to participate in the discussion today. We will be monitoring the chat on all social media accounts. But if you want to perhaps discuss, jump on the Zoom. But you are at the right meeting. So we're going to be here until 8. Please do stay to the end so we can make sure that you are involved in a lot of the key decision making today. Next slide.
Hi, y'all. For those who don't know me, my name is Alec Tobin, and I am an organizer with HCEDD. I graduated from Rice last year, and I'm filling in for Mary Claire for this meeting. So I've been coming to meetings for a long time, and I'm happy to be more present and vocal tonight. So the usual Zoom logistics, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. If you're calling in, that's *6. You can use the chat function to introduce yourself, and then turn on and off your video. Feel free to rename yourself, add your pronouns or anything else. And if you hear something that inspires you, use the hashtag #ProtectTheTray. And if you have any concerns about being recorded, you can email us at hello@houstoncba.org. So yeah, say hello in the chat. Let us know your name, where you're joining us from, and if you're affiliated with any organization, and what brings you here today. And if you want to stay in the loop with HCEDD, you can go to this tiny URL. That's tinyurl.com/HCEDD to get updates from us in the future.
So today, and I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat for you all. Today, we're going to be doing quite a few things. If you're new to this area, you're going to be learning about what all of this is about, what a community benefits agreement is, what is this coalition, and how we can be successful in this space. But we're also going to be discussing some key things that have happened recently, which include a Midtown TIRZ board meeting, which we'll discuss what that is for folks who aren't familiar. And we'll also be debriefing on a recent meeting that the negotiation team had with Rice Management Company. And lastly, we'll be reminding you of some upcoming opportunities to make sure that this effort goes as far-reaching as possible. Next slide. A couple of reminders. We really need you to ask questions. So do that. Please do ask as many questions as possible, because this is the only way to make sure that you leave this meeting understanding exactly what you're for, what you're against, and so you're able to discern when you leave this space as much as possible. But also stay to the end so we can make sure that you get tapped into all the opportunities. But let's talk about third ward for folks who aren't familiar. Next slide. We always start off here because we're all in Zoom land right now. And if anyone's familiar with the geographical landscape of Houston, if you look at the very center of Houston, you can see a large concentration of higher education institutions. What we can say here is that many of these higher education institutions have their own history with, against, and around the greater Third Ward area. And we always want to say that, Rice University is taking another step forward in a history as a neighbor of the greater Third Ward area, and it's getting much closer. So for folks who are able to see the screen, when we're discussing today the development that they're interested in, that they're attempting, it's at the Wheeler Transit Center. So it's right under the University of St. Thomas, that lettering right over there. Next slide. So a very, very, very limited snapshot of Third Ward. Third Ward is a historically Black neighborhood, and about 3/4, by the last time it was studied, about 3/4 of the area are renters, and about half of the renters and 1/4 of the homeowners in the area are classified as cost burden, meaning that they spend at or above a third of their income on housing expenses. And we understand that to affect one's ability to make a lot of decisions on financial decisions greatly, right? Next slide. And this is another graph for folks who cannot see right now. We're looking at a graph that shows a huge I don't like to say overrepresentation, because I'd like to not see that representation at all, but over a large concentration of folks who are classified as low income to poor. So we understand that any change that happens in a neighborhood would especially greatly affect folks who are the most minoritized. So this is something that we do not forget as we're doing anything in regards to the Third Ward. Next slide. All this research and more was gathered as a joint effort between Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy and the Sankofa Research Institute. And one of the things that they noticed after doing all this research is that Third Ward residents actually had a very strong connection to their community. They're very likely to help out their neighbors and participate in so many different neighborhood groups, whether it be neighborhood associations, resident councils, civic groups. They're very much it's a very much engaged neighborhood in comparison to many others in the city. Next slide. But now, oh, go ahead.
So this is just a large-scale overview of what RMC is trying to do in Houston. You see the three scales kind of at the top. There's the ION, which is a building. There's the Innovation District, which borders Third Ward. And then there's this Innovation Corridor, which is the broader circle that you see here. That includes Rice, Texas Medical Center, University of St. Thomas. And at the center of all that is the Sears building, the former Sears building, which is the ION. But in the end, RMC owns 17 acres of land in this area, and they want to develop a lot of different kind of spaces with that land, commercial, residential, retail, and solve these great problems, they say. So that's just some context for what RMC's plans are. They expand far beyond this one building that's being completed now. And here's a little more about the current timeline. So they broke ground on the ION building in July of 2019, and then that'll open this year. And then they have a phased plan to complete the 17 acres by 2030. So that'll be their fully realized innovation district.
And it's also important to realize that what we're looking at right here, folks have to do a lot of digging in documents that RMC had to give to Houston, I believe, planning department. It's very hard for many folks who live in the area or, to find out, the public to find out what's happening on this development, which is a great concern in and of itself. Next slide.
And so these are the people behind this project, Rice Management Company. They manage Rice's endowment fund, and with that money, they make investments and try to create profit for the university. And that's a problem because we know that this innovation district is an existential threat to Third Ward. And we know that that's continuing a long history of threats to this community. So here's a recent report finding that Houston ranks second to last in economic prosperity for low-income and minority residents. And that's coming from Rice itself. And that study also found that this pattern has historic roots. It's a pattern of development.
And we're already seeing a lot of things that are absolutely against a lot of our values. Probably a lot of us who are on this call. Several unions, union representatives, and have pointed out for months that there's been a lot of worker exploitation on the site. I will probably find the link to give you all a recent news article about it. But it's in regards to pay. You even have one of the workers pointing out concerns about sexual harassment, right? And these things are not being taken care of effectively. Another thing is that the Rice Management Company is contributing to the food access issues already in the area. They willingly have decided to replace to fill in the Fiestas, the old Fiestas position with Greentown Labs, and give no sort of indication that there's going to be any affordable grocery options for the residents in the area. And this is already a food desert, right? And also just contributing to general displacement and cultural erasure. There are folks who, if anyone's familiar with the Wheeler Transit area, there's a specific plot of land that Rice Management Company owns right now, where several houseless folks used to sleep and live and just mind 100% their business, just live their best life, right? But now that there's so many gates in the area, we have no idea where these folks have been relocated. I remember at the beginning of this effort, when students were asking what RMC would be doing for houseless individuals, they said that the city will be giving whatever services the city does. And we all know how the city is in regards to houseless folks. So this is just not aligned with any of our values. And it's something that we have to continue to uplift as we push for this effort, right? Next slide. So let's talk about the effort, right? Let's talk about HCEDD. Next slide. So we are a group of neighbors, community leaders, scholars, students, and organizations from the Third Ward and across the Houston area. Next slide. And we're all here to do four things. We're here to develop, secure, and enforce enforce, and sustain a community benefits agreement with RMC as it develops the innovation district, right? Next slide. This is a view of the 31 organizations that are part of the coalition. We see we see a great diversity of organizations, hauling from faith-based to education-based. We see some high school alumni associations. We have labor, unions present. We have advocacy organizations. We have even a university student organization, right? Shout out to the TSU Student Planning Organization, right? Next slide. So let's talk about a CBA, because what's most important to us, even if for some reason you leave this meeting and you're like, for some wild reason, even though that's always not our thing, you don't know what to do next. You even completely forget what HCEDD is. We need to make sure that you understand deeply what a community benefits agreement is, right? If you don't get anything else, for sure understand what a CBA is. So a CBA is a contract. It's a contract between a community coalition and a developer or city entity. And they're legally binding, right? They're enforceable, and they list the benefits that the community is in most need of in regards to the project at hand, right? Now, this is to be juxtaposed with an MOU. We understand that many folks are big fans of the memo of understanding in the city of Houston. Now, I've always made it very clear that my commentary on a memo of understanding is that I think it's great that a lot of organizations often come together and they write that they're going to try to do this cool thing with this certain, sometimes vague timeline, but within the certain timeline. But we know that based off of a lot of history with several communities, especially Black and Brown communities in the city, that many MOUs have not necessarily been not only well enforced, but we have not seen the outcomes of many of those MOUs. And as displacement rises in the area, right, as economic inequity, right, and economic injustice rise in the area, there needs to be a much more active role that folks take when it comes to these sorts of agreements, right? So we're out here for a CBA. Next slide. So let me give an overall view of how we know development takes place at the moment, right? We know that development in the city normally takes place between a developer who has a lot of money or is very influential, especially in regards to big developments, and the city, and perhaps some redevelopment agencies or any agencies that have to make sure that it's compliant, right? So that includes perhaps a planning department that they have to speak to at times. And that's all great in regards to the safety things and whatnot, but we also see especially those big developments, we see these really important groups come alive, right? We see church groups, unions, neighborhood groups, environmental groups. We see all the folks who have a legitimate reason to be interested in the development come through and say, hey, we know you're doing this large thing that has a high potential to affect a certain community that we are responsible for. We want to make sure that whether it be positive or negative, right? We want to make sure that this is done in a way that benefits those, especially those who are most marginalized and minoritized, right? And often when we see those efforts, we see, they may even hire an organizer. They may not have an organizer. They may not have any of the budgets for an organizer like we do, right? And they go ahead and they try to take pictures and get these meetings with city officials and shake hands and get pats on the back. But at the end of the day, they're really throwing their needs at the wall and hoping that they stick. They're hoping that the things that they ask for will come alive. It is fair for me to say that there are times where some groups get what they want, but what we see most often is that all groups don't even get a fair shot at that, right? So let's see a different view of things, right? Next slide. So what does it look like if all those same groups came together and they decided, right? They decided that this development is important enough for us to come together and let's talk about the needs, the most important needs that we have around, that can be fulfilled by this development, right? So they come together and they discuss, they debate, they argue, right? They laugh, all the things together. And they come up with a document, right? A deliberation document that they can now discuss, right, with the developer on and formalize their community benefits agreement, right? What we know is that cities historically in CBA efforts across the country have come in general two main ways. They've either come in before the negotiation process, and they either through a vote, and we see this very often, through a vote, a really important vote, or just through political games that I'm not necessarily most excited to ever play. They pull the developer into the negotiation room with the community, and they say you really can't have X, Y, and Z unless you go ahead and work with this community. Or two, they come in during the negotiation itself, and they make sure that both parties have an understanding of certain aspects that they need to that they have regular involvement with, right? So if both parties are talking about something that regard tax or certain policies or things that the city normally enforces, it's important to have, right, a public servant in the space to make sure that both parties are well informed of what they're talking about, right? So that's normally how cities come in if they are not developers, if they're not direct developers, right? So that is what a CBA is. Okay, next slide. So the purpose of our CBA is twofold. It's short term to make sure that this innovation district, right, to build this innovation district that addresses the needs, concerns, and visions of the people in the surrounding communities who are most vulnerable to displacement and cultural erasure. But it's also long term, right? It's also to set a precedent for how development should be done, right? How equitable development looks like, right? In not only in Houston, but potentially across Texas. Right? Next slide. This is our process. This is a heavily research-based, evidence-driven, and community-led process, right? We are very much about the research. We make sure that you all have the most latest and beautiful research as possible. We are always reading. Next slide. This diagram itself came from the Partnership for Working Families, and they are a national organization that oversees pretty much all of them, all the major, at least, community benefits agreements across the nation. So they're a very great and credible resource to go to in order to learn anything about community benefits agreements. Next slide.
Sorry. So applying leverage is one of the steps in this process. And it was linear on that map, but it's not always that way. That, we've been applying leverage for a long time. That was actually one of the first things we did. In November, all the way through January, students and community members have applied pressure in support of a CBA between HCEDD and Rice through Houston Chronicle articles and Rice Thresher articles and SA agreements, all sorts of different things. And in January of 2020, Mayor Turner installed Andy Icken, a white man from Humble, Texas, to negotiate an agreement between Rice Management Company and the city of Houston in regard to the ion development, which is the opposite of what we've been asking for. So another step in this process was identifying community priorities. So we formed 7 working groups in affordable housing, Black businesses, education, tech entrepreneurship, food access, cultural preservation, and economic opportunities for individuals. And we have been working through and fine-tuning priorities within each of those working groups. When Mayor Turner announced that Andy Icken would be overseeing this project, HCEDD collectively decided that an agreement exclusively between RMC and the City of Houston would not be a victory. We believe that a CBA that is not created, negotiated, signed, and enforced by a community coalition is not a CBA at all. And Rice University students supported this. So an NSA resolution passed by the SAs, the Student Association. They came out in support of this and agreed with us that a CBA is an agreement signed between the community and the developer. And then in January and February of 2020, we elected a negotiation team. So these were community members nominated by members of the community and then elected through a democratic process. And this is the team that we came up with. So this team is accountable to the community and follows community-made decisions. And that's another ongoing process that we will continue with tonight. And so the responsibilities of these team members is to attend CBA deliberations with RMC, invite experts to assist with deliberations on specific topics, and present issues raised in deliberations to the coalition for discussion and for further decision-making.
So it's important to know there's never any sort of like backdoorness. We want to make sure that that the negotiation team is really a vessel for all the things that you say and you want, especially via these community meetings until we, outside the pandemic. So today we're going to make sure that y'all get an update from them on what the last meeting, very short meeting with RMC was. All right, go ahead.
So another part of the CBA process is issuing education. And one of the most important points, the one that we stressed earlier, is that a community benefits agreement is an agreement between community members and a developer primarily. And this is something we've had emphasized continuously. So Rice Management Company and the City of Houston launched a series of Hue Innovate workshops in November of last year, where they asked community members to basically voice their concerns, throw their ideas at a wall, and then they said thanks and packed up and went into closed doors to come up with an agreement. So that's not what a CBA is. There's no accountability. There's no actual collaboration with community members. And we reemphasized that a few months after in October by holding a debrief where we talked about these workshops and what went wrong. And then we invited Rice Management Company to a conversation with CBA scholar Murtaza Baksamusa. He set the record straight.
So, I mean, we want to make sure that we're fair here and we describe in full detail what RMC's process has been. So reminder, they hosted those Hue Innovate workshops, and mind you, these were 3 2-hour-long performances, right? And 10 months after the beginning of this effort, the original call for a community benefits agreement, many folks went there who knew about this effort or didn't know about this effort. And the majority of them, because we made sure that we tried to contact as many folks as possible, the majority of them reported feeling that they were being performed to, that they didn't have enough space or time or seriousness in the space to talk about the very details of the things that they're most interested in. And many of their questions were not answered diligently. The chat was closed at that time to public view, so folks couldn't even interact with one another until a very ending part of the entire workshop. So it was very limited in scope and did not convey the seriousness of the people who, or did not mirror the seriousness of the people who joined those workshops. The next thing that they did is they gave us this. They gave us the 6-step. For folks who can't see the screen right now, we're looking at a 6-line process. This is all that RMC has given in regards to what their process is. I do want to remind you that we perhaps Mary Claire and others have been linking all the research and all the process that we have. We also gave them a very lengthy process through an 8-page letter. But this is all we have, right? And about 4 of 6 of these things, the coalition have already done. So this is what they have started December of 2020, right? And then the last thing is a quote that, and I believe this came from RMC or was put in a recent article on the effort. It says that the agreement to put those benefits in writing will be with the City of Houston, not community groups. So if they want that, then that's not a community benefits agreement, but also, okay, that doesn't That doesn't make sure, that doesn't ensure that people's very needs and benefits on the process, on this development, will be actually taken care of and addressed, right? Next slide. So what we know, right, is that it's not research-based because they actually haven't given any research, so it's not research-based, and there have been plenty of asks for that. It's not evidence-driven because there still is no research present. It's definitely not community-led whatsoever. So in conclusion, it's not innovative nor equitable, right? I always say that the most innovative thing that could happen on those 17 acres of land will be signing a community-led, community-driven, community benefits agreement. I love tech, but it won't come from the tech companies. It'll come from how we decide to treat and regard human life in the city of Houston. That's what innovation will look like. Next slide. All of our correspondence is public, so you can go ahead to our link tree and take a look at all of that correspondence. We are very much transparent about all of our communication with RMC and any elected or appointed bodies. So you can take a look at it. Most notably, it's important to take a look at our November 23rd letter, where we make very transparent our entire process and our reasoning behind said process and our conditions of engagement with RMC. We really do ask for a reply on those conditions, but RMC does not address any of those conditions on December 1st. Instead, they say that they believe that they're doing the right thing. For anyone who is in school currently, please do not do that to any of your professors when they ask you to provide research. Not say that you believe you're doing the right thing. I don't think it will end very well for you. February 7th, we begrudgingly, through several public community meetings that you can see on our YouTube, accepted 4 seats just to sit in and make sure that we are at least influential in that space. On the February 22nd meeting, which you can pull up as the letter on our link tree, RMC declines the ability for us to be within the circle space and says that they would rather have us include or represent our ideas for whatever they're doing outside of the space, okay? Because they're saying that they have gone too far in the process. And I will address that in a bit. So make sure you take some time to read through those letters, because it's important to understand how the coalition has always gone about things. Next slide. So those are these 6 conditions. Right? Give folks a second to read them. Very easy conditions to kind of address. None of them were addressed. Right? Next slide. So how do we win, right? I say a lot of things, and we basically we detailed a struggle, a understandably difficult struggle for the context of the city that we live in, right? So the question is, what does it look like? What does it look like? What's the pathway to winning this effort for multiple generations present and becoming, right? Next slide.
So one important part of that question is the current state of RMC's funding. RMC is asking Midtown TIRZ to invest $75 million of public funding into the Innovation District. So the Midtown TIRZ is a redevelopment agency headed by a board that collects part of the property value that grows when you develop, and they fund developments that improve the community and create more property tax value. And so RMC is looking for $75 million to improve infrastructure and kind of lay down the groundwork for their mixed use development. And that's a big ask, right? And so that there's a process for that. First, that will be put in front of the Midtown TIRZ board, and they'll vote on it. I think it's in the form of a development agreement that they're drawing up now. And then if it passes through the Midtown TIRZ board, it'll go to Houston City Council and they'll vote on it as well. And then Rice will have the money. So currently we're expecting that document to be finished and the vote to happen at Midtown TIRZ board, April 29th or May 27th. And we have to be ready for that.
So like overview, this is a thing that before, this is a whole development that before all of this, Rice Management Company wanted to do with their own money and wanted to shut out the broader community from deciding anything on it. But now they're turning around and saying that they want public money, they want your money to build it, right? So it's even more sensible to have this community benefits agreement, right, to go about this process. So we understand that that money is people first. And again, that true innovation really does mean actual research-based, diligence, equity, right? So we support, we're like, yeah, like we support giving them the public funds for the innovation district on the condition that RMC signs a community benefits agreement exclusively with this coalition before the development agreement is approved, right? Next slide. And we're asking that. We've been doing that for a very long time and very often. So shout out to all the people who have been coming through to, I believe, the last four meetings. Y'all have really changed the direction of and the conversation that's been at the Midtown TIRZ. So it's really important that we continue to ask. We will be giving, you can head to our link tree to make sure that you sign up. I think it's on right now. Yeah, that you can sign up for our public comment. That link is right there right now on the Eventbrite. So we can make sure that we continue to go and we continue to let the board members know, these sensible individuals, that this is what is needed and this is what we want, right? Next slide. So that's the details. The next meeting is April 29th from 12:30 to 1:30. You can also email the board members. In the meantime, we also have an email action guide on our link tree that you can head to. That gives you a draft, gives you all the emails. So all you have to do is make sure that you keep sending and you can tailor it to whatever is important to you. We want to make sure that you have your own voice represented whenever you're speaking or emailing or writing to influential people in this effort. And we want to make sure that you share on social media, right, about this effort and make sure that other people go with you. If you've gone to the last 4 meetings, come to the next meeting and bring another friend as well. We want to make sure that we amplify our influence on this board. Next slide. So let's talk about what the last Midtown TIRZ meeting was like. Next slide. So I'm just to back up, February 25th, and this is due to the immense support that folks like you all have come in and shown on these meetings through call and through email. February 25th, many of the board members called for a need for them to be educated on what CBAs are before they make any sort of decision in the space on the matter. Next slide. So we went ahead and we sent them a letter. And this is just a kind of small crop of it. It's a longer letter with several people that we connected to them. But we gave them the video that some of you watch in the space. We've given them several links to the research and short explainers, but we also introduced them to several scholars and legal experts and organizations from across the country that we invited them to speak to them with or without us, to make sure that they get a third-party, transparent time, like view or workshop on what community benefits agreements are, right? Because unfortunately, RMC and friends are putting out some of the most false information on what community benefits agreement at all measures, right? So we want most of the folks that have been CC'd, I kind of asked them if they've ever been contacted so far, and they've said that they have not been contacted by anyone from the Midtown TIRZ. So we have no idea whether or not the Midtown TIRZ board is actually following through on the concern for education, even though we've provided it. Right. That's where you come in. You'll educate them. Next slide. But we also know there's been some pushback. Many of you have been emailing the city council because the city council is still important on this effort. And some of you have also emailed the mayor in an effort of this. And city officials have responded. This is for folks who can see the screen, this is an email reply to a community member from a city official, Lindsay Williams. And I want to address a couple of things that are in this letter. I'll actually read it out for folks who maybe have called in. Thank you for your message to Mayor Turner. As the City of Houston representative for the CBA working group, I was asked to respond. I am delighted to hear that you are in support of the proposed investment of public funds for the Innovation District. We are working diligently to create a district that offers generational economic opportunities for our neighbors, people of color, and our city. The city is committed to ensuring that the ION and the surrounding Innovation District benefits all Houstonians, including those living and working near the facility. As the governmental agency, the city is in a unique position to coordinate the agreement for all stakeholders and monitor it for compliance. We are committed in ensuring that all community interests are heard and represented in the final agreement. The Houston Coalition for Equitable Development Without Displacement is one of the many stakeholders that RMC and the city have attempted to engage in this effort. The community workshops were open to the public and were designed to gather input from all stakeholders, including the HCEDD. RMC also extended 4 seats to the HCEDD to join the working group that is creating the Community Benefits Agreement. However, upon initiation of the working group process, HCEDD did not accept the offer to participate. Despite declining of the seats for the working group, a continual outreach effort with HCEDD ensued. Our goal is to create a CBA that is fully representative of differing viewpoints, inclusive, and will result in a structure of accountability. Although we are very far along the CBA process, we respectfully request HCEDD to submit their recommendations for evaluation to be included in the final CBA. The goal of the Innovation District is to provide a public benefit to all Houstonians, inclusive of our neighbors in the 3rd Ward, ensuring that equity is at the forefront of our plans in creating this district. So there are a couple things. There are a couple things that I want to make sure that are very clear. Folks who are new to what a community benefits agreement is you may be like mid-confused because you just learned what a community benefits agreement is. For folks who are very used to what a community benefits agreement is, you are probably extremely confused by this response. So I want to break it down, and I want to address a very just concerning parts of this. So there's a point here where in the 3rd paragraph, in the 2nd paragraph, it said that the city is in a unique position to coordinate the agreement for all stakeholders. So the city is in a unique position for sure, because this has not happened in the way in which they're going about it for any community benefits agreement, right? They're in a unique position, but they're not in one for CBA, right? Because they aren't the community coalition, right? They're the city. They're not the developers either. And I've explained what the city's role normally in community benefits agreements in agreements that elevate and amplify community engagement and community power are. So they're in a unique position, but it's not one for CBA. 2, they noted that we are stakeholders. Okay, look, we're not random stakeholders. We are literally the community coalition that is formed for CBA, right? That's maximized for a CBA process. So we're not on the same level as Chevron, and I want to make that very clear. And this is no disrespect to folks from Chevron. I just want to make it very clear that we're not like all the other people, and you can equalize what this community coalition has as an impact on this development, right? So that's important reframing for folks to understand. The third thing is that the community workshops were poorly designed performances, right? It says that this was made to gather input from all stakeholders, including the HCEDD. However, and I actually am not too much against that wording. The thing is, people came to have an actual workshop, right? To actually engage and to meld and to play around with ideas and to have answers, to have questions answered, right? So that's not a workshop. That is more so a performance with a survey, right? And even though that's a qualitative survey that you say out loud, it's not necessarily a workshop that the folks were really interested in engaging in. Right? The fourth thing is that the advisory circle that it's creating, the advisory circle is not creating a CBA via all definitions of what community benefits agreements are. It's said in the third paragraph that this working group is creating a community benefits agreement. It's not. So I want to just make that very clear. I don't know any other way to really make sure that's understood. The next thing that's said is that there was continual outreach to the coalition. There was one email in December letting us know about and this is on our link tree. There was one email letting us know about the advisory circle and reminding us about the advisory circle, right? And then there was our reply on February 7th. There was no official communication with the coalition in between that time, to my best of my knowledge at this very second. And by the way, I have access to the email, so I would know, right? The next thing is, again, this is not a CBA process. They say right here in the that they've gone very far along in the process. But first of all, it's not a CBA process. And two, if you look at the story of several CBAs across the country, they take minimum of several months and like an average of like a year for some of these, right? For some of these very major, large, capital intensive projects. So I want to remind folks that this is something else. And I don't want to denote whatever they're doing as not being helpful to something, but it's not a CBA process, right? It's not what we're talking about here. And lastly, they end off the letter in saying that ensuring that equity, they're doing all this, ensuring that equity is at the forefront of their plans in creating the district. The big question here is, why would you say equity without providing any sort of research on this process, right? Like, not just for the surface level of we need to know what slated outcomes or what the precedence is before, but also there is a long history of folks not having access to the planning behind their community. Equity looks like being transparent as possible to make sure they know exactly, right, what your plans are for them. So we want to encourage you all to email your council member. We have email drafts over on our link tree that you can also, again, play around to your own benefit and include your voice and make sure that you continue emailing, right? You will probably continue to get these responses, but they're not acceptable responses whatsoever by any standard of what type of process, what type of transparent, accountable process that we're engaged in. Okay, next slide. And also, if you ever have questions in the chat or on social media, we see you, so feel free to always ask. There is a part where we're going to have some discussion in a second. On the April 1st meeting, by the way, there was no vote because there was no agreement present. So we know that there will either be a development agreement present April 29th or the 27th or a meeting afterwards. We have no idea why it's taking so long for them to create a developer agreement. But we know that no matter how long it takes, we will always be present. We have to make sure that we're always there, that we're always making sure our voices are being heard on this matter. in all areas in the Midtown TIRZ and the city council. Next slide. So we also, there was like a lot of speakers, right? More than a dozen speakers for a Midtown TIRZ call is a lot because these meetings are very short. They last about an hour long. So to have more than a dozen is really great. What does it look like doubling that, right? Come through, speak, right? There are about more than 80 people on a call, which lets us know, because that doesn't happen very often. There are a lot of people who are even watching this if they aren't even engaging. And we know that at least 10 CBA education emails were put out by residents or folks who have been supporters of this effort because y'all CC'd us or something along those lines. RMC actually got to speak in the middle of the meeting. And they said a lot of things, but they mostly reiterated that they believe that this process will lead to equity. So this thing about equity, we don't just throw this word around. It means a lot, right? It means a lot. It means that there are certain, that there are a lot of, when we say that we're interested in equity, there's a lot of burden of proof that we put on ourselves, right? And the burden of proof in this area for RMC looks like research, looks like transparency around the development. So I think I take what James Baldwin says is that I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. So we want to make sure that we see RMC do what's right by the community. I don't want to keep coming on these calls and unfortunately not giving good news about RMC. I want to say good news about RMC. We all want to say good news about RMC. So we want to make sure that they are doing right by, especially the most vulnerable residents in this entire matter. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about this. There was a meeting that the negotiation team had with RMC. Next slide. What you're seeing on the screen is are the things that the negotiation team came in with the meeting. These are the things that they wanted to hit, right? And they asked these questions. I know this won't be at all this won't be at all how would I say organized, but if any negotiation team member wants to talk about how that meeting went, highlights, lowlights, things that you want to really make sure the community understands, please do at this time. Go ahead and unmute and let folks know.
You said if there's what we wanted to do at this time? I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
Oh, any negotiation team members on a call, if I really want to, or lead organizers, if you want to unmute and talk about how that meeting went, I really want to invite them to do so. If not, I can also come in at tail end. Let's see. We only have a few. I wonder if y'all are doing like a staring contest at this time, but who wants to go first? Mrs. Rogers, did you want to go? Also, I did not let them know that I would be asking them ahead of the meeting, so. Asada, did you want to comment on how that meeting went? I know you weren't in it, but.
Yeah, I could comment on it. I think the goal was to be clear that we were not unresponsive or refused to participate, but one of the things was to share our, really commitment to community engagement and making sure that this coalition and the members of the coalition drive our action. I think, that was really important. And I think that, we're hoping that they left the meeting with that clear understanding and not repeating that to anybody, which they said they hadn't. But we have been emphatically told by several people that that's what it had happened. I think there was, a circular conversation because they kept saying, our intention was to go there since they have taken on this, this challenge and task of creating what they call a community benefits agreement to be able to create some clear benefits. And I just want to say we really are focusing on, I don't know if Mr. Davis is here today, but the adverse, effects of development, which for communities of color, people of African descent, such as the residents in our community, is a displacement, right? Displacing of businesses, displacement of people, displacement of institutions. So we were really curious to know, what progress they had been made. And they, kept emphatically saying, well, we want to know what your agreements are. And again, that's not the process of community benefits agreement, right? So this idea that, they want to know what we're doing when, quite frankly, and I'll say it, I'm not sure who's in the meeting again today, but, many of the people who are on the other side of the table attend these meetings. And they do know what some of our issues and concerns have been, right? And so the conversation was very circular in that way. And I think in our, again, asking them, if you're doing a community benefits agreement, how is it enforceable and how is that agreement binding, right? Tell us how this thing which you acknowledge is not a community benefits agreement as we defined it, how is it binding and how does it protect, the residents, specifically of the historic Third Ward from these adverse effects? And I think there was a lack of clarity on those issues, right? That there's a lack of clarity from them on how they propose this happening in a way that is different than a developer's agreement, which has not been enforceable and has created a lot of disappointments. So I think, it wasn't clarity from them because it wasn't clear how they were attending to those issues. And it's really, a demand of them from us about what they want from us, but with an understanding, you're driving this vehicle. You've decided that you're driving this vehicle, and you decided that, we're not in that vehicle. So we're interested in knowing from your standpoint, how have you created these safeguards since you assure us, you assure the city, you're assuring Rice University that you are attending to these issues and concerns. And that's why our role is not essential.
So I'd like to say something. I guess one of the things I came away from that meeting very disappointed, and disappointed in this sense. We had been told that we were too late for the train and that the train had already taken off and that they no longer wanted to meet with us. So we asked them, okay, so we're too late for the train. Can we see the ticket that you used to get on the train? And what are the things that you said the advisory committee has already done. If they've already done work, can you share that with us? They were unwilling to do that. That, you know, it was double talk, not willing to do it. And so for me, it pointed out why this fight is so important and why we have to continue the fight, because it's obvious you cannot take their word for anything if on something like this, they are not being transparent. You know, if the train is down the road, if the train has gone too far, well, what is it that you've agreed to? They're not willing to share that. And that was obvious from that meeting. I think that they're trying to check off boxes so that they can tell our local officials that they've done what they should do. Unfortunately, that is untrue, and we have to hold them accountable. We have to hold them accountable.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other. I see Carl, but he could be driving. And in case you have questions, feel free to also be in the comments or unmute. I'm going to go ahead and also share this document that details an outline and history of what effective CVAs have looked like. This is a resource from the Partnership for Working Families. We emailed this out, and we always want to encourage folks to take their second and read it, right? It's always important to be discerning for yourself, right? And to read what that process looks like and what are the outcomes of doing processes certain ways. There also is a very great detailing of exactly what RMC is doing, right? So this is even less of a matter of just belief on our side. This is really based off of the history of exact processes that RMC, that it's decided to engage itself in, right? So I want to put a question in this space, even though Asada and Dolores have made it very noted their takes on the meeting. One of the asks from RMC, they were noting that they will not give out the details of what the advisory circle has been doing until we give whatever we've been doing. And that's weird, because it's like the kid who's already said that they're done with their project saying that they won't show it to you until they show your project. It's like, there's no need for you to see our project. But we wanted to put that question out there for you all. And even we know that we have to also be careful, because it seems that anything that we make very public in regards to what the working groups have worked on so hard and long on, that they take and they put it and they water it down. They try to put it in their own agreement to make it accountable by everyone but the community. So the idea is that we make a sort of a mission statement of each working group based off of the deliberation topics that are already present, that are already there, that many of you have seen either months ago or in small meetings. And we perhaps send that to them, but also publicize it. But I'm wondering what folks feel about that idea. If folks don't enjoy that idea, if they enjoy the idea, if they can't live, if that were to be the thing that we do. So what are some thoughts on doing that? That being giving a mission statement of each 7 working groups to RMC and publicizing that.
Good evening, this is Aaliyah Bay. My thought is that's fine, but I really get the feeling at this point, we may, personally, I feel, we maybe just need to get a little bit more aggressive in our approach. I feel, getting the feeling that we are being played with. these responses, this beating around the bush, this word game play of these emails and saying, you know, you didn't sign up for this, you didn't come to the advisory circles, which is, I know, not a fact to be true because I personally did and participated. So that I know not to be true. I think I agree with Asada when she says they're just checking off boxes so that they can go back to their, you know, city organizers and say, we did this, this, and this. I feel like we may be being a little bit too polite, not saying that we have to become rude, but I definitely think we need to become more aggressive in our stance. Doing the mission statements is fine, but again, like the other lady, I believe Dorothy was her name, said, again, it's becoming circular because they've asked us questions before. We've explained to them what it is that we're seeking. We've put it in writing. We've said it in person. We've said it numerous times. I think it's just games being played at this point. I would like to see maybe if there could be some, and I don't want to use the word scathing, but maybe an official letter or something drawn up that we could send to every council member, detailing specifically what it is you're doing, what we did, the lies, I'll just say the lies that are being told and spread. And basically, if you're not on board with this, we're just going to take this, your constituents are going to take this to assume you don't stand on the side of equity, you don't stand on the side of your community, and there may be repercussions that comes along, you know, when it's time for elections again. But I think we almost need to put on our Republican hats and maybe kind of take a bit more of an aggressive approach, because I feel like this is actually, like they told Miss Dorothy, the train is already gone and left the station. This is a very fast moving train and we're just kind of along for the ride. And I think we need to jump back ahead and in front of this thing and recontrol the narrative, because the narrative that's being spent is almost like we're amateurs, you know, all of us are uneducated. We're just kind of throwing stuff against the wall, hoping something sticks. We don't really know the process. We don't really know what's going on. It's almost like they're trying to present a narrative as if we're unorganized and we're just kind of, you know, we're the freshmen at the table. And I know that's not the case. Everyone involved is very educated. They're very committed. They're very passionate about this. They've done their homework. We've been on this for almost 2 years now. So we didn't just come to the train station. You know, we tried to get on the train when the train was leaving, you know, so they're continuing to roll without us. And we need to put our foot down. Hey, stop. Enough is enough. You know, like, this is what it is. You guys are playing games and this is where we are. And if we need to get, you know, media attention involved, something, but we need to, I think at this point, hit a little bit harder and playing nice, you know, being the nice, polite people, you know, begging for a spot and asking, will you please listen? It's not getting us the results that we wanted. I mean, it was a good introduction, but now it's time to play hardball, you know, and I think we need to meet them where they are. And I just feel like the memos are fine with the mission updates, but I feel like we need to kind of take a more of aggressive approach at this point. And then also too, even if that letter, like we have all those 30 plus organizations that are on board, can we get something circulated where they can all sign and, you know, sign on to this letter in agreement, and then we can submit this letter to all these city council members, board members, just shoot it all across the city. So that way, you know, we're controlling our narrative, not RMC, because as we know, like I said, they're not being honest, because again, I sat in those advisory circle meetings. So for them to say that we didn't participate is absolute just false. And for the city to regurgitate this story lets me know the side has already pretty much been chosen. They're just going through the formalities and the motions at this point, and that's not acceptable.
Thank you so much. We have a comment that says, totally agree about being more assertive. And we're making a note for a couple of these things. We're gonna push, right? We're gonna push. So there will be way more opportunities ahead of the 29th to make sure that we have a little bit more diversity in the approaches that we take. So thank you so much for that. Any other thoughts on the idea of giving a mission statement of each one of the 7 working groups, or in general comments? There's also a comment that says we also have the 7 specific needs that we address that have been public since the beginning on flyers and socials. And there's a feeling that this person says there's no need for a mission statement. Look, there are folks who were leading PR for Rice Management Company that were in the room at some of the tables, right, when we did this original breaking up and starting of the working groups back in November and December of 2019. So yes, I feel that. I feel that sentiment. Any other thoughts? Can anyone not live with us giving a mission statement to for each one of these 7 working groups and publicizing that as well?
I think it can be served as a strategy to get more people engaged, and also as an education, right? You know, what is our purpose for affordable housing? Making sure that we protect residents, you know, in the neighborhood from being displaced, that they have affordable housing at, you know, 50 to 30% of AMI, right? That existing, I think a mission statement, you know, and I think it's a good litmus for what they're doing, right? Will what they're doing meet our mission? And our mission is to preserve, protect, and revitalize the neighborhood. I think a mission statement is better than giving them the details of what our requests are when they have not agreed to consent or put us in a process to make sure that those agreements are, you know, put into into any document that's created, right? So I think the mission statement helps us get focused and helps us continue to educate people and engage more people.
Thank you. There's a comment here that says, I agree with being more aggressive. Can we do a march, a sit-in, a carnival bringing together all those adversely affected?
I think so. I think even, you know, and I think one of our next meetings is having, you know, we have one political strategy meeting. I think we need to continue to talk about what actions can we take, right? Because I think the actions is to continue to educate people so that whatever document comes out, we're able to have people who look at that document and critique it and say, oh, wait a second, you know, this does not do enough, right? That's really important process, because that's a win too, because whatever document comes out still has to go before city council. And we want to be talking about what it is, you know, we're working towards and how this doesn't meet that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess my question is this about the mission statements, is that we already as a group came together and said that we are for equity and fairness that minimizes the displacement of residents of Third Ward that are being impacted even today. I mean, residents and businesses impacted by the development, the unmanaged development of the ION building. You know, because if that ION building is managed appropriately, they will be taking some mitigation steps in the following areas, as far as education, as far as housing, all of those 7 categories, which that's what they don't want to put in an agreement. And I think that they are not dealing in good faith. I understand they're also hiring contractors that are not treating workers fairly. You know, there are a lot of things that are going on. So I think the mission statement, I think we just have to have one overall mission statement and put the bullet points of the areas, and let's move on, because they are not playing fair. They're just not playing fair.
Mm. Mm. Do you think that it would that doing the mission statements would bring people into the cause, though? This is what Asada said, Dolores.
We can still do that, but I don't think we can delay for that. You know, I think the overall mission around equity, fairness, and minimizing displacement, I think that's the mission statement we should give them with our bullets, because I do not believe, based upon that meeting, that they're going to give us any more than that themselves. And the other fine points, I think that, you know, working on the mission statement for each group can help when we get down to the details. But, you know, we need to get them to agree that they're going to do an agreement. So, I mean, that kind of detail, I get it. We spent a lot of time on this. I think we have had a lot of engagement of the community. It doesn't mean we have to stop that engagement. But I think we need to address the current stalemate. And to me, the quickest way is to identify the overall mission, because we want an agreement that's binding, not one that will change with the political, climate in this city. You know, the mayor cannot guarantee when he leaves that anyone is going to stand behind these loosely stated, not right now, as far as I'm concerned, non-existent agreements. You know, or whatever the committee is working on from the Ion building. They can't even produce it. So I just think we're just kicking the ball down the road, and we need to, I agree with most people. We need to, in some way, accelerate what we're doing.
There's a emphasis on being way more aggressive and accelerating in our outreach, right?
I have something building off Dolores and Asada's comments and comments in the chat as well. I think we've seen RMC in the city downplaying HCEDD by asserting that they have the expertise to do whatever it is they think we want to do. And so no matter how large and no matter how big our dreams that we tell them in our mission, they're going to say, well, we can do that better than you. And so I think part of our mission is the community gets to direct its own destiny. And yeah, I think that should be also central to the mission or the points that we give them, so that it's built in, so that we don't have to qualify, here's the content we want in this agreement. But we have to do it. I think it's built into our demand.
I like that. There's also another comment that says there have been a lot of communities that have been harmed by MOUs. Freedman Town is one example. Can we bring them in to testify how these approaches, vague and unbinding promises, have devastated their communities? Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Ken. Did you want to go?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, they're not paying any attention to us. And until we get their attention with that money from the TIRZ, they're not going to listen to us. They just keep sending us busy work to go do, asking us for this and asking us for that. So let's just focus on the TIRZ and hopefully stop that. And then we can sit down and negotiate with them. If they can't get that money from the TIRZ unless we agree to it, then they'll sit down and listen to everything we have to say and invite us to every meeting they they're going to have. And that's just how I feel about it. They've already shown us who they are when they lied on us saying we declined to come to the meeting. When they asked us to cut from 8 to 4, and we said, no, we want to stick with 8. And then they just stopped talking to us. So I know who they are. I've dealt with them all my life. I know who they are. I know how they play the game. And we need to get their attention. And the best way to get their attention is to stop the Midtown TIRZ money from getting there.
Thank you so much. There's also a comment that says, I'm wondering which TV and radio personalities can we approach to help generate more public support? If you all have any connection to a radio station or news media organization, please, it'll take 1 second probably, connect us via email so we can set up and also make sure that other residents who are not on this call or who are on this call get a chance to make an appearance and talk about this. That is our email. I do have a private question on if having some of those connections that are outside of Houston would be helpful. I think any media connection is really great. Of course, one of the most valuable are local things, but I can also attest that I think there are other communities outside of Houston or even Texas that actually understand community benefits agreements and are used to them. So I think their media media is even uniquely valuable to this as well, because they have a certain lens on it that is based off of prior experience of success. Any other questions, comments? There is a question here. At the April 1st meeting, because RMC got to speak second and were able to appropriate the term CBA in bad faith without any response from HCEDD, how can speakers pre-examined and contest those same misleading comments in the next TIRZ board meeting during the public comment section? So we'll first of all make sure that we update the details that we normally give all speakers that help y'all formulate your topics of discussion during public comment. So we'll make sure that we include some things that kind of help you speak to that. I can say, one of the things that I said when I spoke at public comment at the last meeting, I said, look, I appreciate y'all even hearing us during public comment, because I know that there are plenty of people who are in your ears who don't even need public comment to influence you. RMC was, so for clarification for folks who weren't at the meeting, RMC was called on in the middle of the meeting when the agenda item came up of their agreement to respond to some of the things that community members have been going to the meeting talking about for so long. And they got to speak. It wasn't outside of meeting rules or whatnot, so they spoke. They didn't, the board members didn't decide to call on us to give any sort of clarification to it. They just kind of let RMC have the last word, which is not a problem, right? Well, it's a problem. If I was in their position, I think it's a deep problem. But it's not. It doesn't stall or screw up our effort, right? Our effort is most strongest when we make sure that everyone understands what a CBA is, understands this effort, and exercises that understanding through public comment at the TIRZ and at City Council and in the greater community, right? So them speaking second and having that last word to say that they believe, right? Just talk about their belief. It won't be the biggest thing that we should be concerned about, right? We should be concerned about getting our neighbors, getting our friends, getting everyone involved, right? getting media involved, right? So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. All right. So we'll sit in the background and we'll play around with what those mission statement or statements. We'll play around with what, we'll take a look at those deliberation topics and see something. But our biggest and immediate concern will be getting 2 parts, getting more voices from this coalition on through media channels, but also secondly, getting folks seen in person. So we'll try to, I've been hinting at this for a while, but we'll make sure that we get some things that can be seen physically around the area and in Third Ward because of such gracious donations to the Cash App. That is our only funding for this. So we'll be doing that to the greatest of our ability. And we thank you so much for that effort. Right?
Could we
Next.
clarify what the decision is on the topics or the mission statements?
So we have no idea what that would look like when we're doing. I'll be real frank with y'all. I have no idea what that would look like because we haven't gone in that process and tried to crank something out from the very detailed things that are in the working groups. But it seems that we'll make something and then we'll give it to the negotiation team to decide on what it, if it represents in fairness, in fair detail, what folks in the working groups and through these meetings have liked and appreciated. And if it is, then we'll go ahead to publicizing that, making our own graphics, putting that on cards, making sure that we use it as mainly an effort to get more people revved up and interested in talking to the community. And then secondarily, one for RMC. But it's dependent on how good are we with our language, right?
Can I ask if anyone else has thoughts about the way to maximize those mission statements' impact, like how to make them more exciting, more aspirational, more representative of where the community, what the mission is? I think Mary Claire's point was really good that they should be focused on.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm trying to talk, but I've been making all kinds of noise. I think, using something that has classically been done, like what do we want? Because that's what they keep asking us. What do we want, right? So I say, say I'm in a set of 7 sentences that speak to what we want. It goes back to the Panthers, 10-point program. It's been very clear. We want affordable housing that residents in the historic Third Ward can afford, who have been long-term residents. We want to be able to build that housing on existing assets that are owned by nonprofits, churches, and others who have historically been in the Third Ward. Very clear.
We'll play around with it. And plus, we also have
what we want in plain speak is a powerful way to engage people and to carry our message.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it's a lot of stress this week, so I'm out walking while we're meeting.
No, I need to go walk too. Actually, fun fact, I have not been outside for over a day, so I need to do that.
That's my favorite way to have meetings too.
Yeah, so we always welcome any of you to be outside during these meetings. Get your fair share. So we'll play around with. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add on to what was just said, one of the things that we've been refining over in the 4th Ward, Zion Escobar, Houston Freedmanstown Conservancy, we're working on similar intention things through a different method, because as you know, Freedmanstown is a very different stage of having things done to it than Third Ward is. So we're kind of like the train already left and it crashed, and then we're picking up bodies, and y'all are watching a runaway train, right? And trying to figure out how to stop all the deaths. So I'm sharing kind of what we're doing, but it's a different animal in a lot of ways. One of the things that we've been doing in conversation and sometimes on social media is saying, what does X look like? And so, for instance, what does preservation look like? Preservation looks like affordable housing incentives for this, financial incentives and tax breaks that equal this amount, qualification and exemption if you are in a historic home. Those are the questions we're asking. We're seeking resolution on that level of specificity, because it's a specific ordinance that you can either modify that ordinance to say this can now be a variance in addition to this existing experience. We're asking, people saying, what does engagement look like? We're saying specifically how we're trying to do that. So I don't know, that's just maybe a different way to frame the question that actually includes the answers that Assata basically just said. Be very, very specific. And so even with that affordable housing one, here's a nuance that I can't even say I know the answer to right now, but saying what specific percentage of median income is acceptable and what are the ranges, because not all of them are possible given the cost of the land, right? Sometimes you can actually put a tent on a lot and it won't be affordable even if it's a tent, because the cost of land is so high. So then you have to actually ask for something that is possible for someone else to change that isn't already a fixed condition. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're finding solutions and whittling them down. So I just wanted to share that. It's not a whole lot, but just wanted to share that we're here with you guys. We support what you're doing, and we sympathize with how difficult it is and it can be, because we're going through it too.
Yes, and we will be calling on you all to, to even, tell the story even more and leverage that. Yeah, I think the reason why I can't make too many promises of what it looks like, because when I open it, there's a lot of specificity. So we have to play a game of like what specificity is most important amongst all the specificity that's in all these different working groups. So that's the game that we have to intellectually play when we're writing, but all of this is really helpful, and this grounds a lot of how we're going to go about it. We appreciate it. All right, next slide. So we're going to remind you all on the upcoming actions. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Williams. I did get the notification, so we'll jump on that. So reminder, next slide. Again, Thursday, 29th, Thursday, April 29th, we have that meeting, but also, next slide. You also have opportunities to speak at City Council public comment. I don't believe we have that Eventbrite up right now, and it will be up. We'll send that over to you either later tonight or early tomorrow, so you can sign up and make sure that you speak as City Council public comment. Even though this is not in front of City Council, we don't want to be in a position, right, where for some reason it gets to City Council in a form that we do not agree with, and then we have to do backup narration and explain what we've been about and what's been happening. So it's still important to speak at the City Council public comment during Tuesdays, and we'll make sure we get those Eventbrites to you all so you can sign up and speak. All right. Those are the two that we know right now at this very moment of how to stay engaged. There will be some more that we send out. We have some planning to do, of course, but that's where I transition things over to Mary Claire. Next slide.
Can we stay on that slide a bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I was wondering, maybe this is getting ahead of ourselves, but if people should expect, or if people are interested in another public, not live stream, but a public strategy meeting, so we can talk through some of these escalations and aggressive tactics that we want to see. And I know that among organizers, like sometimes there's background stuff we do, but I was wondering if people think that's necessary, organizers and anyone.
I think that's a good idea.
Would people come through as soon as next Tuesday for a strategy meeting, part 2, to get this off the ground?
So we're getting some yeses, some affirmations, got a thumbs up. Got another yes, more thumbs up. This sounds like a I don't know, like a concert at this moment. So much energy. This is all I got in a pandemic. Just, the Zoom chats and thumbs ups. I like it. This is where I live. Okay, sounds good. We will schedule that, and we'll also put that Eventbrite out. It will be, we may have some certain portions that are public, but it'll probably be a private one. And we'll make sure that that's understood in the email, and in case that folks want to be in it. All right, go ahead and take it away, Mary Claire.
All right, thanks so much. So the last little part of the meeting, we're going to talk about something that it was months ago that I asked y'all if you're interested in HCEDD participating in this research project. So the time has come. Honestly, the time has come because I have like a month left to graduate and I need to finish it before that. But we've always been researching, and we always have been researching. So anyway, I wanted to introduce this research plan and the upcoming opportunities with this quote from Ruth Wilson Gilmore. It says, "To act requires detailed observation, which we might call hearing, although it need not be through the ears. The object of analysis is prized open by practitioners like you and me." And what I love about this is that it describes how, because we've been acting all this time together, we've been studying, we've been learning, and we've been observing with everything we have, with our ears when we speak, mostly to an audience of ourselves, knowing what we want for ourselves, but also to everyone listening, everyone who, elected officials and developers alike. So yeah, next slide. What kind of study this is overall before I go into the specific opportunities. It's two main things. One, it's a class project. So it's my senior project for the Rice Center for the Study of Women, Gender, and Sexuality. It's a feminist engaged research project, which means I have a community partner. In this case, I'm fully part of the community partner already, but that makes it even better. So my contact info is there, and I'll type it in the chat as well. But in this case, I'm both like, so I've been an organizer with HCEDD, and now I'm adding in another role of researcher, which I want to acknowledge is a separate role. So it's 2 roles at once. But for the sake of this research project, when you do have questions, you can send them to my personal email instead of the hello@hcedd email, because that distinguishes between this is a research activity and this is an organizing activity. So that's the way in which this is a class project that I need to do to graduate. But on the other hand, just as importantly, it's a space for us to collectively reflect on community leadership and democracy throughout the CBA process and share what we've learned. So this also, to be honest, as I became an HCEDD organizer over the past year or so, I started feeling so much like I was learning way more in this space than I ever had learned in school, high school, elementary school, middle school, college. I was like, I was upset, like, why has my education, why am I just now feeling like I'm getting an education with you all in this effort? And instead of taking that and saying, oh, well, school is useless, education is, going to university is useless, it challenged me to look more closely at how education actually happens, and that it's not quite as simple as it happens in school or it happens outside of school. So going back to like taking this like organizing activity and bringing it back into school has been challenging for me, but I'm excited to delve into it and embrace the fact that we've been learning all this time, and this is a great chance to slow down and take the time, because organizing is very fast paced, and we often, we say the train is going. We're doing a million things at once, so I want this to be enjoyable because we get to slow down and remember how far we've come, remember how much we've learned, and share that both with each other and as widely as possible. So a technical note, this is like an official research project that's been through the Rice Institutional Review Board. So basically Rice has approved it. I know that's sort of ironic because we are organizing to change Rice University's economic way of operating. And I think that in the same way, we can act to change Rice's educational way of operating, because how are we going to teach? Anyways, let's move on. But I'm excited to embrace that paradox of us doing a Rice research study while we're organizing to change Rice University fundamentally. So next, big question, who can participate? It's open to anyone who has ever participated in HCEDD. So if this is your first meeting you've ever been to tonight, you're welcome to come through, as well as any HCEDD organizers that have been here the whole time. But you do have to be 18 or older. And this is the exciting part. There's no Rice Management Company or One World Strategy affiliates allowed. They're usually invited to all our public meetings for organizing because we do things transparently, but this research study is for us. So we want it to be a safe, comfortable space for sure. So that's part of the criteria. And then deciding to participate is 100% your choice. And that goes for now, that goes for in the middle of, an interview or a focus group. You can always choose to leave and come back. Next. Okay, so how this will start is with small group discussions on Saturday. And if you go to the link tree, if someone could drop that again, so it's right there for people. If you go to the link tree, you'll see an interest form, and I'll use that to decide the timing of the different sessions. But yeah, these will be on Saturdays, and the reason I can't give the exact time is because we'll have, depending on how many people are interested, we'll have them throughout the day at whatever time you can best make it. So again, me and Mary Claire, I'm the researcher / facilitator, and there's my contact info. And please fill out the interest form by 12 p.m. on Wednesday, if at all possible, so that I can get back to you quickly with when you can expect to show up and put all the groups together. And I want to go through the some things you can expect from these small group discussions on the next slide. So I will confirm your time by Wednesday afternoon after you fill out the entrance form. I will also send you a consent form that you have to read and sign before I can officially, so that you can officially say you agree to participate. It will be a 1 hour or maybe an hour and a half discussion, depending on how many people are in each group. It's looking like it will be about 4 to 6 people, but that's flexible again, depending on how many people are interested. And this, I want to focus on this last point because it's very different from the usual way that qualitative research, like interview-based research goes. So my major at Rice is anthropology, and usually in anthropology, we're encouraged to anonymize the feedback we get from people. And that's usually because we assume that it protects people more if their voice is just kind of randomized. Like this is the generic voice of a generic community member in Third Ward. You can vaguely describe who they are and why you're interviewing them, but usually your name is erased. So for this project though, I want to actually give y'all the option of having your actual name be like represented in whatever paper I write up or whatever presentations I might give at the end of the year. And that's because like if a scholar is communicating with another scholar and decides to talk about what that scholar taught them, they always cite their name. They don't say, oh, this came from a random like person who is just a generalized identity. They say who that knowledge actually came from. So during these small group discussions, you will have the opportunity to remain anonymous if you want to just speak without necessarily having your name attached to it. Or you can say, this is me and this represents my voice. And I want that to be, I want to proudly like put my name next to this. Lastly, the topic. The main prompt that the discussions will build off of comes from Ella Baker's teaching that strong people don't need strong leaders. So I said that this talk will be about, or this project is about democracy and leadership. And we put this quote on many of the slides in every single community meeting, but we have never really paused and said, wait, what does that mean? Because honestly, it's pretty like jarring to read, strong people don't need strong leaders. What does that mean about leadership in the first place if there are no strong leaders? So I want us to dive into that. I know what I think about this statement, but that's pretty much just based on my short, almost 2 years of being an organizer for the first time as a student. And I know that many of you come to this group with a lot more experience and different perspectives on community leadership and democracy that have shaped this effort as well. So I want people to share those. I want us to think through what principles have guided and challenged us throughout the CBA process, and then decide how we want to share what we've learned with future communities organizing in Third Ward, Houston, and beyond. Next slide. So going off that last question, how will we share what we've learned? What I know for sure is that we'll have, if y'all are still down for this, a public discussion at the next community meeting. So not the strategy meeting, but the next live streamed, fully public community meeting. We'll have another research participation opportunity that is bigger group with everyone at once, where we'll kind of combine the insights from the small group discussions and present how they differed, how they're similar, and what we can make of all of them. And then I have, like my class-centered presentations, which you are all welcome to join, but it will be like all of my classmates presenting their research projects. But I'm gonna leave this open because I never know what kinds of ideas y'all might have for how you want to share this research. It could be that we want to publish like some kind of writing. Ooh, yeah. We want to publish some kind of document or like article or something, or it could be that the point of the research is more important just for us, just to have the conversation in the space that we have them, and the product isn't necessarily the important part. If you'd like, you can bring up ideas now about what kinds of outcomes you want to see for this research, or you can keep thinking on it and bring them to the discussions. Wait, Eris, did you have a question on the May 5th?
No, I'll just be there.
Oh, okay, sweet. Yes, and I'll provide more details on these opportunities when I know the details. But the next slide is for questions. So you can go there, and yeah, so what questions do you have, or what ideas do you have for where you want to see this research go, if anywhere outside of the groups themselves?
Speaking as an organizer that's concerned with this effort, I think I'd love to see whatever format it comes out as. Unfortunately, I don't have commentary on what format. just it being helpful to even archiving of the process and making sure it'd be very interesting because it's coming from Rice University. So it's legitimizing exactly what this effort is on a different paradigm and a different level. So I think being able to use that for not only archival purposes, but also for our elected officials and appointed officials saying, hey, like this is a thing that came out of Rice University and has been approved of Rice University as the process that we've been engaged in, right? Because prior to this, we've been going on lots of research that's already taking place across the country, but this will be the first research on this type of process in Houston, in Texas, really. So I think making sure that it's helpful, right, is important. But of course, first and foremost, making sure people have fun in the space. I think it's important too. Any other comments for Mary Claire? Any questions? So Mary Claire, can you remind folks what they got to do to get involved?
To get involved immediately, you should go to the link tree and fill out the interest form. That's the only way. So the Zoom links won't be shared to the whole entire listserv. It's only if you fill out that form. Then those will be on Saturday. You'll be confirmed what time to show up for your small group by tomorrow afternoon. And if you can't come at any point throughout the day Saturday, then there will be another opportunity at the next community meeting. But that will be public. So if you want to participate in this research in a more intimate and private way, then you should come to the small group discussions. Did I miss anything?
I wouldn't know. This is not my thing. So this is all you, man. All right.
I mean, is there anything people need to know?
Okay.
That I obviously looked up.
All right.
Any other questions or preferences, ideas?
So look out on your email around tomorrow for all the updates that came out of this meeting, including all the action. You can immediately sign up for the TIRZ meeting right now. It's on the link tree right in front of you. You can also immediately sign up for Mary Claire's small discussion groups. But reminder, these are some things that we need from you all. We need this persistence of discussion that you all engaged in today and continue to engage in at all these public comments. We need the creativity. We need the technical expertise. Shout out to all the volunteers involved in making this happen every single time. You all are the backbone of this. We need your curiosity. All the questions that you bring are very helpful and make this only stronger. We need all the joy, laughter, and friendship, especially in this time. And we especially need your social media clout. A lot of y'all have more clout than I'll ever have on social media. So please follow us on HCEDD and HGentrification, put your notifications on, and tweet and post and share and amplify. You are also, in addition to media sources, you are also a vessel of amplification. So please do take advantage of it. I'm going to give you 1 minute back. Here's all our contact information. Our Cash App is there in the case that you want to donate, so we can make sure our physical presence is available when we start printing and posting and putting things in the ground. So I can't say much of it, but it's important if you have a couple dollars, put that in there. It all goes towards the resources and the materials. So I'll let you go. And Alec, is there any other last questions before we go? All right, Alec, can you take us out, please?
shout out to everybody that's racist that getting exposed. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna lie to you. It's a beautiful time. No. Shout out to all the black people who feel liberated.
And considering
feel
what
like they can
happened
be
in
your whole
Minnesota
black self,
today, I mean, this
I'm
week, this is
100%
really
with you.
profound.
And we're about to
So
give you some of this black love, even with my white counterpart in the
Especially.
band. We're gonna give you some black love right now. Here we go. Let's get it.
Hey, look, I hope you catch a wave.
Talk to him.
Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. With the nappy head Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave.
Yeah.
Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. With the nappy head Christ by their side.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold.
Yeah.
Hope my whole hood make it home.
Yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
Cause the world can be toxic, especially when your skin look like chocolate. At one point they sold us for profit, but we made it out of the gauntlet we chosen. Yeah. On my mama, the south side still holding. Yeah. Go for broke for the ones that are broken. Yeah. Please don't make me no hashtag or slogan. Yeah. My whole hood is golden. That's why
I pray you catch a wave. Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy head Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave. Doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. The nappy head Christ by their side.
yeah.
May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home.
Cause they riding with choppers. It might turn your table to pasta. Don't hardly see daughters at altars. Probably cause there ain't no more fathers, they stole them. Yeah. Put in cages by racists patrolling. Yeah. The hood is a light to the pins like we bowling. Yeah. Please don't make us no hashtags or slogans. Yeah. Black people are golden. That's why
I pray you catch a wave. It doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. Nappy head Christ by their side. I pray you catch a wave. It doesn't subside. This for the nappy heads in heaven. Nappy head Christ by their side. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. May your streets be paved with gold. Hope my whole hood make it home. I hope you make it home.
yeah.
I hope you make it home.
Every hood.
I hope you make it home. Whoa. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. Yeah. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home.
Make it home. Talk to him, Luke.
Make it home.
Talk to him, Luke.
Make it home. Make it home. I hope you make it home.
Talk to him, Dave.
I hope you make make it home.
Yeah,
I hope you make it home.
black people.
I hope you make it home.
Come on, come on.
I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home. Make it home. Make it home. I hope you make it home.
Yeah,
I hope you make it home. I hope you make it home.
I hope you make it home.
Thank you so much. Mary Claire, you can go ahead and end the recording. Oh, the live, I mean.
How do I do that? Do I just X out?
I got it.
Sorry.
Can you make me host, please?